So after making a video about Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic Generations 3DS, the only logical next step is to talk about Sonic X Shadow Generations. That's why we're talking about Sonic Lost World today.
I also had to bust out the Wii U for this game, despite owning it on Steam, because I thought I had downloaded the Legend of Zelda content, but I didn't. Would it have been easier to record from my PC? Yes, but then you wouldn't get such amazing content like this.
Please stop making me use the Wii U gamepad. Oh! Alright, we're good.
I collect video games, and Sonic Lost World intrigues me for two reasons. One, I actually really enjoyed this game when it launched, and I'd even say it's a good game, at least from what I remember. And two, the only way to physically own this game is on the Wii U for now, which is all sorts of funny in my opinion.
I begged my parents to buy me this game back when it first released, and I genuinely enjoyed it back then. But times change, and so do opinions, so I want to see if this game stood the test of time for me. Maybe I'll end up really enjoying it, or maybe I'll end up seeing what people are talking about this whole time.
First things first, let's get into a small history lesson about the game, since, you know, Wii U exclusive in the 2010s was basically a death sentence for your sales figures. Sonic Lost World was announced 11 years ago, and people immediately started dunking on it. It was written off as a Mario Galaxy ripoff by a lot of people. It launched exclusively on the Wii U in October of 2013, and then Sonic was found dead a week later in his hotel room surrounded by illicit substances. Okay, so the console version may have launched exclusively on the Wii U, but there was a portable version of the Nintendo 3DS. I've never played it, nor do I own it, so if for some reason I decide to talk about it, I'll have to cross that road another day. Maybe if this video does well, I'll talk about the 3DS version. I know it has entirely different levels, so I'm intrigued, but I've never touched it. Sonic Lost World was then ported to PC in November of 2015, and that means you can mod it, which is a plus. I'm going to trust that someone out there has already made a dick mod. Moving into the actual game, it starts with Sonic and Tails fighting Eggman on the tornado. In other words, it's fucking Tuesday, and their plane gets damaged, causing them to land on what is known as the Lost Hex. The Lost Hex is actually never even remotely explained, so forget I even mentioned it. Sonic must then free more animals from Eggman's clutches while he controls the Deadly Six, a powerful group of enemies known as the Zeti. I'm gonna go ahead and get this out of the way right now. The story and the dialogue are complete garbage. There's a few funny moments, and Eggman is genuinely great throughout, but the vast majority of the time, this story is complete ass. Knuckles and Amy are also here, but that really doesn't matter since they don't do anything. But the main antagonist during the majority of the story isn't actually Eggman, it's the Zeti. In the second world, Sonic kicks away a magic conch shell that Eggman uses to control the Zeti, despite Tails trying to warn him to stand down. This would be a cool time to show that Sonic doesn't always make the right choices, but Sonic literally never grows from this. He fucks up again and gets Tails captured, but it's not Sonic that fixes that problem to redeem himself. Tails manages to survive because he has incredible dexterity with his tail. Sonic is kind of a bumbling idiot the entire time with really bad dialogue, and this somewhat forced conflict between him and Tails. I'm completely okay with showing Sonic's flaws, and I think Frontiers, as well as that one scene in Shadow Generations, does a great job at showing Sonic isn't perfect. But this is just him being a fucking moron. Oh, and the Deadly Six, holy shit. Listen, around this time, Sonic seemed to be going for like a Saturday morning cartoon vibe with its stories. Colors was pretty cartoonish, and Generations barely had a plot, but its dialogue was written like a kid's cartoon. But here, the Deadly Six are genuinely just tropes, and not even good ones. Zavok is the leader, and his shtick is that he's pissed Eggman controlled them, so now he wants to destroy the planet. He's the best Zeti, but that's like saying he's the piece of shit that smells the least. Next up is Zaz, and his whole thing is that he's mentally unstable, and that's about it. Then we got Zamom, and his entire personality is that he's fat. Then we got Master Zik, aka Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda. He's old, and I hope his pacemaker fails. He was also their leader before Zavok. Then there's Xena, aka just a vain woman obsessed with her looks. Sonic kinda roasts her, which is funny, but she's as one-dimensional as the rest, being nothing more than a stereotype of vain women in cartoons. Lastly, there's Zor. I hate Zor. I want Zor to fall in traffic. He's awful. His whole personality is what cartoons show moody teenagers as. He's incompetent, annoying, and I genuinely hope he falls into a wood chipper. His stupid haircut makes him look like Drizzile from Pokemon. If he has no haters, it means I am dead. The Zeti can best be described as a colossal waste of time. Sonic and Eggman team up in the story to face the Zeti, which is a cool concept, but when Sonic's dialogue is so awkward and weird, it does nothing for me. Their team up has no gameplay elements either, so it's tied to the narrative. Seriously, Eggman is here with a great performance, threatening to eat the Zeti's hearts, and meanwhile Sonic is like, whoa, gotta go fast, they kidnapped my best buddy! There's a lot of cutscenes to boot, and while that's nice for world building the Lost Hex, it's also a drag when a lot of the cutscenes are just the Zeti being useless in an ominous black void. This is arguably one of the worst Sonic stories. All of the dialogue in this script feels so unnatural.
Booting Sonic Lost World up to the first level, you can immediately see where the Mario Galaxy comparisons come from. However, I'd argue that Mario and Sonic games are pretty different in their moment-to-moment gameplay, and that remains true. However, the way that Sonic Lost World chooses to present its themes and level ideas is comparable to Mario.
Sonic Lost World constantly throws new ideas at players in the same way a Mario game would. Previously, Sonic games used different characters to add variety. Meanwhile, Mario games changed things up with level themes and new ideas. Think Sonic Adventure compared with the new Super Mario Bros. Series. Sonic Adventure had small things to set levels apart between characters, but the most drastic changes came from the characters you played as, like Knuckles being completely different to Sonic. In New Super Mario Bros., the characters all have slight variation between them, but generally do the same things. However, the level tropes present in the different worlds present players with different challenges and ideas. Think about how ice physics and the ideas and gameplay concepts that surround those in the ice world differentiate themselves compared to swimming in water and the idea and gameplay concepts that surround that in the water worlds. Neither idea is inherently better, but they are different. It's part of why a Mario game still feels different than a Sonic game, even when you might have the same objectives in each, like rushing to the finish line. Sonic Lost World presents its ideas like a Mario game would in that sense, but kind of wraps that in a Sonic package. You still have speed and momentum-based platforming, even if that momentum is kind of jank sometimes. Sonic Lost World is certainly different, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Sonic has a run button in this game, but all of what I said isn't to illustrate that this game is a Mario ripoff. It's to show what I believe is the sensibilities behind these design choices, which was to show off gameplay variety through different stages and ideas mashed with alternate routes like the classic games, rather than through different characters going through the same stage/zone.
Now then, does Sonic Lost World stick the landing? I'd argue, to a relatively okay degree, it does.
The game does come off as kind of herky-jerk though. While I do enjoy the bombardment of experimentation with Sonic in this game, I understand why people might not. I also don't think Sonic Lost World presents its differing zone gimmicks and ideas with enough polish sometimes, and they can come off as annoying and inconsistent. Mario games typically have focus and tight design housing the different gimmicks and ideas in the level. Although swimming and skating are both different, they are both in line with the rest of the game's design philosophy and controls. Sonic Lost World doesn't really do that, with things feeling more like a dartboard of random ideas being hurled at you. The wisps being another example of a lack of polish. You know, in a Mario game, the power-ups present sometimes serve to further diversify the levels from one another. Think of how the penguin suit in the ice worlds makes the level a little bit more icy, for lack of a better word. Well, Sonic Lost World does something similar with the wisps, and they're literally the worst thing in the game. The wisps are here for absolutely zero reason, and at least on the Wii U gamepad, they genuinely control like shit, and are complete pace breakers as they pause the game to make you pull out the stylus to control some crappy gimmick. I hate the stupid flight wisp especially, it never controls right. Thankfully though, the wisps are almost completely optional from what I played. Unless you want Super Sonic, who's locked behind getting every red ring, you have to use the wisps. Needless to say, I didn't bother with Super Sonic. Sonic also has access to the parkour feature. Honestly, once you learn to use the parkour feature and when it feels like working, it's pretty fun, but until then, it's a complete hindrance. Parkour is done by holding down the run button and going up against the wall, but the game does not adequately teach you everything you can do with Sonic's parkour abilities. Also, since parkour is tied to the run button, on small platforms and stairs, you might accidentally do it when you don't want to. It took a long time getting used to that. Sometimes the momentum doesn't carry over properly from a run or parkour jump either, making Sonic have a super awkward jump that barely goes anywhere. That constant, inconsistent transfer of momentum killed me a few times and can serve to kill the pace. Sonic has his double jump as well, which helps a lot with quick readjustments mid-air. It also does a great job at extending Sonic's reach when you get a jump with a lot of momentum, allowing you to fling him across the stage, adding to the sense of speed in the game. It takes getting used to, but I found it to be a good addition to his kit, and most of these levels were designed with the double jump in mind. In a completely boneheaded decision, the double jump and homing attack are both set to the A button. This naturally leads to either input coming out when you meant to do the other. Speaking of the homing attack, it's genuinely my least favorite move in Sonic's repertoire in this game. They divided the move into two. One is the standard homing attack on the A button, and one is a kick on the Y button. I understand why they did this, variety in how you deal with obstacles, but it doesn't work in how they chose to implement it. In this game, some enemies must be kicked first to be taken out, but an enemy taking 2 hits when they used to only take 1 hit just makes things less snappy. Sonic can also charge the homing attack, and this just doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes the reticle won't appear, and sometimes it appears but won't charge. It's unintuitive. 2D sections suffer the most from this unintuitiveness, as accidental homing attacks, accidental parkour, and inconsistent momentum can all get in the player's way from fluidly enjoying these levels, which is a shame because there's genuinely good levels here. It may sound like I'm very critical of the game, and while I do think the entire story is practically worthless, I think the game genuinely shines despite all the outlying flaws. Sonic is fun to control when things go right, especially in the first 3 worlds. I loved blasting through them while grabbing the red rings and pulling off little tricks I remember from when I was a teen. Sonic's parkour does have some method to the madness that is the controls, and by the end of the game, while I did still struggle with the mechanics, I could feel I was getting better with them. Momentum is an issue in this game and it feels super inconsistent, but it doesn't bog down the experience enough for me to say I didn't have fun. When the game clicks, it really clicks, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. And I can understand why to some that makes this game too inconsistent, but to me, I enjoyed it. Level themes coming out of nowhere, like the random casino and Frozen Factory, make absolutely zero sense, and definitely can come off as herky-jerk, but to me, it was fun seeing Sonic go to all these random places and have all these random ideas and stages. I could still go fast in most of them, and after getting used to the controls and how the mechanics of the game worked, I came to like them. But therein also lies the problem. A lot of this game is unintuitive and wildly inconsistent. So while yeah, I genuinely like it, that's because I stayed and learned the game. This means the game doesn't have the pick up and play nature the classic games do, and requires multiple playthroughs for it to really click within you. With that being said though, I really do like this game. All of Windy Hill is genuinely so much fun to blast through with the infinite spin dash that you can do. I love jetting across the sand and desert ruins, and when you can get the parkour to work, it's fun in 2D. I even love the desert ruins gag that they pull. Tropical Coast gets shit for the fruit gimmick, but I find it whimsical and cute. Hell yeah, Sonic, you bathe in the surprisingly high pressure apple juice. Don't get me wrong, not every level is a winner, but even the bad levels don't stick around too long, so things keep moving incredibly quickly. The 2D levels also have a genuinely decent flow to them once you get used to the controls and aren't accidentally wall running every time you want to get a move on. I enjoyed seeing how fast I could scale these vertical sections, and while I wish the design was a bit tighter and more cohesive, I don't think what was presented to us is really bad at all. The graphics are also lovely with beautiful colors and an art style I think works for Sonic. The music, especially the boss theme, is a good listen as well. I think people are right. This game lacks direction, it's unintuitive, and the ideas lack focus. However, genuinely, I think if you stick with the game and somehow figure out how to deal with the unintuitive nature of the game, you'll find a fun Sonic experience. The game isn't going to win you over if you're a newcomer, or even if you expect a certain level of cohesion and consistency, but in a super weird way, it's an acquired taste.
It could be worse. You could acquire a taste for Overwatch.
I feel like if the game had some more polish and a tiny bit more focus in its level design and themes, we would have had a genuinely great Sonic game on our hands.
But it's not my job to judge a game's potential. Actually, it's not my job to judge a game at all. I do this shit for free.
But I say this with all honesty, I think this game is a good time. I would wait for a sale since I do think it's quite obvious why this game is so divisive, but I'm happy I replayed it, and who knows, maybe someday I'll come back and finally get Super Sonic. I think games like these are important to show that different ideas may resonate with different people. I'm curious to see what you all think in the comments below. Do you guys think I'm a moron who shouldn't have used that Mario analogy in comparison? Or am I a visionary for seeing what others couldn't see in Sonic Lost World? Sound off down below and join me next time where we ask veterans if they think they could beat Sonic the Hedgehog in a fist fight.